Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Week 3 recap. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about how we did.
Yeah.
I actually won all 3 of my leagues.
Lucky.
Very lucky. I was up by 30 points or something last night going into both of last night's games. Mm-hmm. And I was playing against Mike Evans and Jamar Chase.
Ooh. Yeah.
They came up 2.05 points on the short side. Actually, I didn't win all of my games. I actually tied a game. Yeah.
That's no fun for anybody.
No. And unfortunately, it's that league from last year that was super high scoring, and we've changed everything. And But the thing that we haven't changed is partial points. So it was 150 to 150.
So you guys don't do any tiebreakers, like the score of your bench or anything
Nope.
like that?
Nope. Just goes as a tie. I had Puka Nakua last night, who played fairly well.
It was kind of an ugly game.
Yeah.
That Rams-Bengals. It was not fun to watch.
And then on top of it, I had Hurts, and Hurts did not have a Hurts game. Mm-hmm. Although I'm lucky that they ran that 4th down touchdown. I didn't think that they were going to.
Yeah.
I figured they'd kick the field goal. And in that league, so I had those two, and he had Elliott.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there, field goal. Oh, come on, stop. Field goal. Really? Give me a touchdown.
Yeah.
Finally, the touchdown came. And I don't know. And then in our dynasty, I played against a team that didn't score too well.
Yeah.
So
lucky.
Yeah. So I'm 2-1, 2-0-1, and 2-1.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. I won in my main league in the redraft. Actually, I think in that league we had 3 teams that were 2-0 to start the season.
Okay.
Now there are no undefeated teams.
Wow.
Only undefeated teams, so that was pretty good. I think last year, me and maybe Isaac last year, when it was like week 5 or 6 when I think I had lost. And
didn't you lose to him?
Probably.
That was your first loss, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it was just a quick year this year for, to have no undefeated teams yet. So, Derrick Henry this week, we'll talk about him in the duds, he's been pretty disappointing so far. I think there might be some changes need to be made in Tennessee, which again we'll talk about in a little bit here.
Yeah, but I'm not even sure his backup is worth having.
Yeah, I stashed him just in case because there was a pop-up with like a toe injury or foot injury with Henry, so I stashed Spears just in case. But yeah, so he's been disappointing in the Dynasty League that I'm in with Oz. I believe I lost in that one. I think my opponent scored like 195 points or something, like that.
You and Isaac both lost.
Yep.
And like I said, Isaac inherited a horrible team.
Yeah, he's made some good moves. Yeah. So, and then in my other dynasty that I'm in with Nick, who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I actually lost to Nick by a little bit over a point going into the matchup. Well, I had Devontae Sunday night that went nuclear, got me close, and then I had Stafford and Evans, and I think he might have had one more player. I can't remember who, but came within a point and ended up losing. So
wow.
Yeah, so just needed Stafford. Like I said, the game was just ugly. It was not fun to watch. I really think for NFL, and then which would translate into fantasy, if the quarterback throws the ball and it hits somebody in the hands or it gets deflected by the defensive line, it should not count as a interception for the quarterback.
Right. Was the ball
Obviously, it's
catchable?
a takeaway for the defense. That stat matters. But for quarterback's sake, if it gets deflected or if the receiver pulls a Kadarius Toney and it goes right through his hands, that should not be on the quarterback to take that hit, because I think I would have won had I gotten that point from that second pick.
And even, take away fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
You sit there and you talk about, and what does it matter in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
But you look at players, a quarterback, and you say the guy's throwing X number of interceptions. How many are attributed to him?
Mm-hmm.
And how many, because occasionally you'll make a horrible throw and it's an interception. But when you throw a ball, like you said, right through their hands, why are you being penalized?
Yeah.
Because it's going against your all-time stats and your rating, and it shouldn't go against that.
Yeah. Well, I think if you change that, then you'd have the guy or the person out there that'd be going, well, quarterback throws the ball for, a wide receiver screen behind the line and he houses it from 80 yards. That's not an 80-yard completion. That's a negative 1 yard completion.
Well, and now all of that, the Mahomes comes up with it and just lets go of it in front of them.
Yeah.
And those are passes now. That used to be considered a handoff.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't used to be able to do that shovel pass. You couldn't throw it underhand forward.
Yeah.
And now, you can do pretty much anything and get away with it, and it's considered a pass.
Yeah.
So, all of the statistics over time, it's like, the 85 Bears defense, great defense. How would they be this, in this day and age against the speed and size of players? I don't know, but that's the thing. Back in the 20s when players were blah blah blah, you can't. Back in the day, there were only 10 or 12 games.
Yeah.
Then they went to a 14-game season. Then they went to a 16-game season. It's a 17-game season. You cannot compare. I mean, it's apples and oranges. And I think anytime someone says, well, Sammy Baugh was the greatest quarterback of all time, no,
He was. He had, defensive backs that just got done doing their mail route.
Exactly.
A half hour before the
Exactly.
game.
I mean, it's a completely different world. You cannot say, in my mind, there is no GOAT. There is no greatest of all time, because you look at a guy like Bart Starr, who had how many championships and how many Pro Bowls and how many. It's not the same. It's not the same. So, anyone who says, well, this guy's the greatest, it's changed. It's the everything about football has changed.
Yeah.
When you've got sub 4 defensive ends, etc., that weigh 275 pounds, I would love to see some of the running backs of old or the quarterbacks of old try and deal with some of the physiques that are out there, the sheer athleticism that has completely changed the game, which is why there are more rules to protect quarterbacks and defenseless receivers, etc., because the league is completely different than it used to be. Speaking of injuries, let's get into our injuries. We start with Gus Edwards, concussion. He's in the protocol. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say a concussion was expected, but if you are a Baltimore running back, do not expect that you're going to play an entire season.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I don't know what it is about Baltimore running backs. We joked about JT going there.
Yeah.
That's a death sentence.
Yeah, I mean,
not truly a death sentence, but you're not going to play a whole season.
Yeah. So that one's weird. I mean, And I think even Justice Hill might be a little banged up too after the game. I mean, they had Melvin Gordon. They elevated him from practice squad.
Luckily.
He actually, I was just telling Oz beforehand, I watched some of that game. He actually looked halfway decent.
He used to be a very good running back.
Yeah, he ended up with like 7.5 fantasy points, but two catches for like 32 or 23 yards or something like that, in the inverse of each other, and then decent amount of rushes for like 30-something yards. So it wasn't, terrible for coming off the practice squad, but it was definitely interesting. Ravens, did they end up losing that game? I can't remember.
Yeah. Field goal.
Yep.
In OT.
So kind of a weird. I think they just need to get back to their roots, which is Lamar just doing everything.
Yeah.
That's the only way it seems like it's worked. Zay Flowers has been really nice. Mark Andrews only had like maybe 6 or 7 targets this week, which is a healthy amount of targets, but just not what you're expecting, especially for like me, where you draft him in, 3rd round.
Wait till we get to our studs and see what the targets look like.
Yeah. So, interesting in Baltimore. Concussion, he'll probably be out this week, so...
Yeah, even Jalen Waddle was out.
Yeah.
And his seemed like less of a huge hit than some of the others have.
Yeah.
Like the one on Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
That was just a ridiculous one a couple weeks ago. But the one on Waddle didn't seem as bad. So I didn't see the Gus Edwards hit, so I don't know how bad it was. Next up, we have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Same thing. Concussion
protocol. Didn't see that either. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I didn't watch any of the Raiders game. I don't remember what I was doing, but I didn't watch it. But I don't even know who their backup is, to be honest. Devontae had an amazing stat line, so whether that was with mostly
I think Garoppolo went out late, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, so, who knows? Maybe before that, Garoppolo was actually trying to push the ball downfield a little bit. They're trying to figure that out with the Raiders. Josh Jacobs has been, with sitting out a, preseason and, mini holdout that he had, obviously, you're going to have some rust, and it's going to take a while to get back.
It's 3 weeks in. He's going to turn it around now.
Yeah, and that's what people are saying about Justin Fields. What he did last year was like week 6, and then he exploded and went on this mega huge tear, and so.
Yeah, who knows? Next up, Mike Williams, knee injury. He's on IR, lost for the season. Yep. That's going to be tough, and we have a couple of guys in one of our new segments where we're going to talk about waiver wire pickups, and there are a couple of choices there to possibly look at to replace Mike Williams. Next up, Derek Carr. He has an AC joint sprain. He's week to week.
Might be best case scenario. Watch that replay of the way Rashawn Gary had to jump over a teammate, another Packers defender, and grabbed Carr and just whipped him and then kind of came down with him. I feel like the way he hit and was grabbing it, I immediately thought collarbone.
Exactly.
He's done.
Yeah.
So AC joint sprain. Week to week, we'll probably see Jameis again, which I think could elevate. Olave a little bit, definitely a dud. We'll throw his name out here, Shaheed. He's their big play, deep threat, speedster guy. Maybe you get a couple more shots because we all know Jameis isn't afraid to throw interceptions.
Right.
So.
And the year that he was 30-30, he threw for 5,000 some yards. The guy can sling the ball.
Yep.
And they get Kamara back.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot to worry about there. Carr may miss a couple of weeks. It just depends on how bad of a sprain it is.
Yeah.
I've done that playing hockey. It's painful. It'll probably bother him for the rest of his life, like mine does.
Yep.
But I continued playing hockey, so I don't know. But I played hockey
You
three
can play
fractured
through.
vertebrae and 2 broken ribs. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Hockey players just tend to be a little different than most athletes across the board. So it's hard to tell. Next up is Joey's brother Julius Chestnut. Apparently he pulled his hamstring, or was he eating a hamstring? Maybe he was eating hamstrings.
I don't know.
Or something. I don't know. So
yeah, actually, I just got the notification not too long ago. They actually put him on IR.
Oh, okay.
So like a little bit ago, because my dynasty bench, he's on there. So came through. They just put him on IR, which I think it's not going to affect Derrick Henry, but to have Spears as the true backup there, and then God forbid, because I have Derrick Henry, but if something happens to him, that leaves Spears alone to be the guy. So
might have to sign Joey Chestnut because he's got a better stomach for it.
Could be.
Okay, let's move on to our studs, and I'm going to let you pronounce his last name. It's Devon. Is it a Shane or a Chain?
I think he actually, I saw too, told Miami how he wanted it to be pronounced. It's not a chain. It's like, I don't know exactly the pronunciation, but it's not chain. It's probably Chan or a Chan. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's Devon. I mean, the guy who had 4 touchdowns.
Devon a Shane.
One of the
We'll call him a
Dolphins that
Shane.
had
He was just 46.1 points above projected.
Yeah.
He had 4 targets, caught all of them, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran 18 times for 203 and 2 more touchdowns. I obviously don't expect that going forward. He's a little back with a lot of speed. The interesting thing is that Raheem Mostert was second on our list, plus 26.7, 7 of 7 for 60 yards and a touchdown, 13 rushes, 82 yards, and 3 more touchdowns. So between them, they had 8 touchdowns. I mean, it's stupid.
Yeah. Like Oz and I were talking. I was saying that's a high school game.
Yeah.
Or like week 1 or 2 of college when like I brought up Bama versus like Citadel or Troy State or something like that, where it's just a tune-up game and you let the starters go out there for a quarter and a half and just beat up on these guys.
Yeah.
That was.
And that's the thing. People said, well, they were running up the score. No, they had their second string. Well, did Tua play the entire game? He played.
I think he played for most of it.
But then you brought in a Shane or a Chain, Achin.
Well, he was involved from the
Right,
get-go.
right.
I mean, he
Off and
had
on.
the touchdown pretty
But at
early.
the end, he was
The first touchdown pretty early.
right. But then he was. I mean,
Well,
they sat
18
Mostert,
for 203,
and they didn't really throw the ball that much, and so it was just a crazy game. I mean, like I said, you score 8 touchdowns between 2 running backs.
And Denver's supposed to have a pretty good defensive backfield as well. And I watched some of that game, and every time they handed the ball off, it just seemed like pretty much Mostert and A-Chain were like one guy away from breaking yet another gigantic touchdown. Every single time they touched the ball.
Yeah.
Surtain got burned by Tyreek Hill like immediately. Chosen Anderson of Carolina days of old had 1 catch for a 68-yard touchdown. It was just a. It was just a beat down.
I gotta change my name to the Chosen.
That was just insane. But yeah, like you said, Mostert, he's the starter. Obviously, he's earned that. Jeff Wilson's been on the pup, so he should be back after this week. So that'll be interesting. I believe. Is it Ahmed? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah.
Salvin
Ahmed.
Yeah. He missed this week, but sounds like he might be back. So he may take over as that second back, and A-Chain will be the passing down special teams kind of guy potentially. So, and they've got a little more difficult of a matchup than on paper. Obviously Denver, like we said, is supposed to have a pretty good defense, or at least a good defense with a couple guys on that defense that are, very good. They're going against the Bills this week, who just put a smackdown as well on Washington. But granted, that's Sam Howell in Washington.
Right.
So it'll be interesting
That was
to
a
see
game of
how
turnovers.
it'll be interesting to see if Miami comes out, are they riding that high this week and they're going to come out and look kind of flat against the Bills right away?
They should have Waddle back.
True, but just after that, you see it every now and then. You get a big, huge emotional win, or you do that where everybody's having a good time on the sideline, and then you come out the next week and you're just flat, and there's not a lot of energy.
But we've also seen, and we've talked about it, the Bills' rush defense does not look that good.
Mm-hmm.
So, those guys, are they going to put up those numbers?
God,
Probably not again in their lifetimes. But they could still have big games.
Mm-hmm.
Next one up is Kenneth Walker, plus 17.3.
My start of the week.
Start of the week. He was 3 of 3 for 59 yards receiving, and he had 18 rushes, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was against Carolina, correct? No. Yeah, that sounds right, Carolina. They ended up winning pretty comfortably. With like we said, Andy Dalton came in and helped boost that Panthers offense. Kenneth Walker's just, even with Charbonnet there, like Charbonnet almost had that touchdown, but he just destroyed that guy and sent him flying, and it knocked him out of bounds right at the 2-inch line basically. But Walker's just so good, getting all the he's getting these touchdowns, which is nice. It'll be interesting to see as the season goes on if Charbonnet gets even more involved. Hopefully Walker can stay healthy this season, because obviously last season, started out really good and then got injured. Just another good solid stat line from Kenneth Walker.
Yep. Next up is someone we talked about last week on our Love 'em, Leave 'em, Flip 'em.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Devontae listens to the podcast. And so Devontae went off. He was 17.28 points above projected. It was 13 catches on 20 targets for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. 20 targets. Crazy.
Yeah, that's what you have to do if you're the Raiders and want to win games. It has to be Josh Jacobs. You have to hand the ball off to him 20 times, but then you also have to be able to feed. Obviously, 20 targets is insane.
Yeah.
But 15 at least a game for Devontae Adams is what you have to do if you want to win games. Like we said, there's some rumblings. He's come out and said pretty much he would like to be traded. He doesn't want to wait around. It'd be interesting to see if that happens this season. Based off money and what a team could give the Raiders and all that. It would be a pretty tall order, I think, even though he is 32.
No, I think 30? He's 30 or 31.
Yeah, something like that. So
yeah, he's getting old.
Getting a little older, but obviously,
not a lot
can
of
still get it done.
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, he's still a premier receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I just, as a Packer fan 2 years ago when we traded him, there's no way I wanted us to give a 5-year, $150 million contract to him, because things happen when you turn 30, 31, 32 as a wide receiver.
Yep.
And it's usually not good things. So moving on to the fifth guy in our studs, another one, Keenan Allen, plus 16.33, 18 catches on 20 targets for 215 yards. He also threw the 49-yard touchdown pass
to Mike Williams.
Then
tore his ACL.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, 2 guys getting 20 targets in a week.
Keenan Allen has 26 receptions? 22 receptions? He's got 20 plus receptions in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think
18.
I think it's like 20. It's anywhere from 22 to 26 catches in the last 2 weeks.
Well,
you lose Mike Williams.
Puka did that the first 2 weeks.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, Mike Williams is out for the season, but you've got Eckler hopefully back this week. When Eckler's out, the Chargers know Josh Kelly's not it, so
yeah,
the poor, Eckler owners or people going out and picking up Kelly as a spot start have been screwed by.
You've been rewarded,
Josh Kelly, because the Chargers know that if Eckler's out, Kelly's not going to get it done on the ground or through the passing game with him. They have to throw the ball, which means Keenan Allen, and pretty much only Keenan Allen. I mean, Williams had a really nice day as well before he got injured.
Oh, yeah.
He was on his way to a really, really nice day. But I would expect more of this. I mean, Keenan Allen's been probably, so far this season, probably the steal of the draft, I think, from where he was going, like 4th, 5th.
I thought you had someone else who was the steal of the draft.
Mike Evans, yeah. I mean, who has been very good as well.
We can only have so many steals in this draft.
But Mike Evans, has been doing really well as well, especially with what was going on with that team and kind of the, with Baker coming in, all that stuff. But talking about Keenan Allen, obviously, that's just a ridiculous stat line. 18 of, for 20, 15.
No touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. Now you throw that into a PPR.
Yeah.
You just picked up 18 points just for the receptions.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yep. That is crazy.
Yeah.
So then we move on to our duds. As you mentioned, Derrick Henry. He was 0 catches on 0 targets. He rushed 11 whole times for 20 yards.
Yeah, he had.
I mean, their offense was pathetic.
Yeah, he went into half with, I think, -7 rushing yards. So I was talking with my buddy Isaac, kind of during and I think after the game. I think if this continues and the Titans look as bad as they have been, I think Vrabel's out. I mean, I think he's a good coach, but Ryan Tannehill, why is he still a coach? I mean, granted, they have Malik Willis, which we know he's not an NFL caliber quarterback yet, or maybe ever. You got Will Levis, who slid in the draft, just fell to Tennessee.
At some point, though, you have to make a decision.
I know he's looked bad. I mean, you've got DeAndre Hopkins, who. Week 1 looked pretty good, had 13, 14 targets. He's getting a little, I think he's 30, 31 as well, right. So he's getting a little older, but, still has shown, like last season in Arizona, was very good. He's shown he can still be one of those top guys, but Ryan Tannehill is so bad this season. It's just, either they need to make a change at quarterback, or I do think there's going to be a lot of changes coming up for that coaching staff. It just... Well,
and how old is Derrick Henry getting?
Well, true. I think he's 20... He's got to be 28.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting to the point where they're old.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to rebuild. Maybe it's time to start over.
Yeah.
Get rid of some of those old guys. Find out if you've got a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then, start, not unlike the Packers did, go young.
Mm-hmm.
Try something and see how it works and build from there. And they've still got some old guys, but it's like the stat that we saw where 53% of the salary cap wasn't on the field this past week.
Yeah, it was crazy. But, I will give credit to Cleveland's defense. Cleveland's rush defense is for real. They are a very good defense. Same with Tennessee. Jerome Ford didn't have... he had a good game because he had 2 touchdowns, 1 receiving and 1 rushing, but he only rushed for like 30-something. It wasn't a lot of yardage.
Right.
So that was a tough matchup for the running backs and that. But
I think that...
to have, Derrick Henry... and he had 5 carries. I think it was only 5 carries going into the half for -7 yards.
Yeah. They only had, 100 150 yards of total offense.
Yeah,
they were bad.
Stupid.
Yeah,
so
it was bad.
But like we said, I know Derrick Henry's getting old, but he's a running back. You have to give him as many carries as he can handle.
I mean, the objective is to beat the crap out of the defense until they're worn down, and then at the end of the game, he busts out those 25 to 40-yard runs.
Yeah.
That's
who Derrick Henry is.
Right.
If you're not going to use him, is that either move on or just you're going to end up with the number 3 pick in the draft, which isn't terrible, but with that roster,
it's not going to get you Caleb or Marvin
Harrison. No, but
so next up we have Daniel Jones, who kind of laid an egg, minus 10.88 points, 22 of 32 for 137 yards and an interception, and 2 rushes for 5 yards. Again, we thought he would be the guy, and we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thought he'd be the guy, and he wasn't it. So. But like I said, we talked about him on after the Thursday game Friday. So then we've got Sam Howell, who was minus 10.63. He was 19 of 29 passing for 170 yards and 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
1 rush for 18 yards. Not a good game for Washington.
No, they did not look good. Like I said, that Bills defense showed up.
Yeah.
Played really well. The 1 rush for 18 yards was a little interesting to see because he's actually a pretty mobile, athletic guy. He's a guy too, kind of like Daniel Jones, where you can design runs for him to help keep the defense a little bit honest and not let those defensive ends pin their ears back and really go after your quarterback. You have to do things that make them pause for at least a split second. You have to do stuff like that. So, Washington, obviously, with Howell, not like there wasn't a lot of hype, but you have Bieniemy coming in. They just haven't looked good. I dropped Antonio Gibson this week because he fumbled again. I mean, he was out on the field more than Brian Robinson because they were in catch-up mode, playing from behind. But he fumbled again. He's just yuck. So I just dropped his. He's a bum.
Again, you're playing against Buffalo,
Mm-hmm.
and of late, not the best run defense,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to beat them with the pass.
Yeah, and then you get down so far, you have no other choice.
Right.
So.
Don't get it. Next up, Joshua Kelly, minus 8.6. He was 1 catch on 1 target for 5 yards, and had 11 rushes for 12 yards. We kind of talked about that as in the matchup and everything. And
yeah, you got to be pretty bad to only total 12 yards on 11 carries against Minnesota's run defense that got destroyed by DeAndre Swift the week before.
Right.
You got to be pretty bad.
Maybe DeAndre Swift is that good.
I mean, he looked really good last night, too. He went over 100 yards again. Yeah. But, I mean, that was, granted, Chargers won, and that's the goal. But, going into that week.
Luckily.
Yes. Going into that, I mean, that was 2 teams that both love to lose by a possession or a last-minute field goal. So, it was, as a Packers fan, obviously it's nice to see it go the way of the Chargers. But, yeah, I mean, he's had the really nice week 1, but it was with Eckler out there as well. So he's definitely a drop-in. I don't care if Eckler misses another week. He's just no good. I would get rid of him, open up get somebody else that, somebody's maybe a waiver wire target we'll talk about here in a minute.
Right.
But just bad.
Okay. Last dud was Rashid Shaheed, minus 7.61. He had 2 passes thrown his way and caught nothing. He had 1 rush for 0 yards. So a stat of 0.
He did return that punt for a touchdown.
He did. But in fantasy, unless you give those special teams players points, I mean, it's kind of like Mims.
Yeah.
Mims had a punt return.
Something, yeah.
For a touchdown. But it only counts if you're in a Yahoo league or something that uses that stat.
In our redraft league, he did get points for that.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's going to be kind of the thing with Shaheed is, special teams, like he's, their guy for that. And then, if he gets 4 targets, he might turn one of those into a giant, into a 40-plus yard, or even just a touchdown. But I think he's talented, super fast, but he's gonna be super up and down with this floor, but he's got a pretty high, or decent ceiling.
You mean he has a floor of 0?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he truly is one of the higher variable players you could have on your team. So.
Yeah. So we're not going to do the look ahead for Thursday Night Football anymore.
Green Bay's winning.
Okay, so you've heard it here. Green Bay will win this week. Especially if they get any of their players back.
Yeah, we get Jones and hopefully Watson. I mean, Watson looked like he had tried to warm up. Doing some warm ups and stuff.
And Jair could be back. I mean, you had 5 starters out of the game. Yeah. So, to start the game, 5 starters. So it's tough to, at this point, it's tough to tell what the Packers have.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be really good. They could be really bad. Mm-hmm. It's just unknown at this point. And if the left tackle, Bakhtiari, is only going to play once every 3 or 4 weeks, that's a problem. Especially for all the money they're giving him.
Yeah, as I say, time to rip the Band-Aid off.
So, in lieu of that, we've got waiver wire pickups. We've got sell high and buy low thoughts. Mm-hmm. So our waiver wire pickups, I've got Devon Achane, mainly because more than likely he was not drafted. Mm-hmm. Depending upon how you do waivers, if you just allow people to pick him up at will during the game, which I'm not a fan of.
Got to pay attention. Got to be light on the fingers.
In the league, yeah, but that...
I know, it does suck. I mean...
It takes away from, everyone being able to get those players.
I will agree. It sucks when it happens to you, but it's nice when you get, I sniped Jerome Ford when Nick Chubb was still sitting down on the field after the injury.
Right.
Turned out to be good because Jerome Ford's been good for fantasy, but, in the other way, if that happened, obviously you would like a shot at an actual true waiver period, you know. Right. So
I mean, in the league that I've been in for 32 years, we actually run a waiver every Tuesday night. So tonight into tomorrow morning is the first time anyone can be picked up after they played. Mm-hmm. After their game starts, they are unavailable to pick up. So you can't drop a guy who's already played a game and pick up someone who's in a game on a Sunday and have that, there are reasons for it. And it just, like I said, it makes it more user friendly. It makes it so that everybody has that equal opportunity. But I really like him going forward. And part of that is, as our sell highs, one of those people is Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
We have not been quiet about this. Raheem Mostert has usually not finished a season. So in my mind, and I'm guessing in Austin's also, is that Raheem won't finish the season and Devon Achane will be the starting running back, or at least a huge part of that offense. Partially moving forward, but if and when Mostert gets hurt, he'll take over more responsibility, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said a little bit ago when we were in the studs, Jeff Wilson will be back probably, not this week, but next week.
Right.
Ahmed's going to be probably back this week. I mean, this is a crowded running back room, and they, like Jeff Wilson, is a little bit bigger of a running back, whereas, like I said, he's not a huge guy either, but, obviously last season they like to use all of these guys when they can, and this is a Dolphins team that was also trying to get Dalvin Cook, in the offseason.
Yeah.
Which...
What were they going to do, carry 6?
Well,
I mean, most teams
They
carry
cut-
2 or 3.
Yeah, cut Gaskin. They probably would have got rid of Ahmed as well. Maybe they would have made some space, but I mean, this was a team that was looking for a true.
But Kelly's another guy that's
Yeah.
injured a lot.
Yep.
So it's hard to say who they would have kept.
Yep.
So next up we have Donald Parham. He's been catching touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big athletic receiving option in the red zone for Justin Herbert. I mean, Gerald Everett, they tried to get him in the end zone, but he's come up short a couple times.
I think Parham has, 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, he had the one previous week and then 2 this week. I actually built out a DraftKings lineup this week, and he used my tight end as a nice cheap option. I wouldn't even, it's not even an outside chance. He's, probably 60% chance he catches a touchdown again this week.
Right.
Especially with Williams
Right.
out, they need, if Eckler's out again this week, they need these receiving options. And like I said, Parham's he had some hype on him. I think that was 2 seasons ago, I think, when he was a rookie. And then he had that nasty
concussion
where he was, had the, where he was like frozen,
Yep.
on the field. So he's a guy the Chargers like. If you are streaming tight ends, I think the rest of the season is going to be a good streaming option in a plus matchup. So
right, and we've talked about this. These waiver wire pickups may or may not be available because of the format that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
My 16-teamer, Devon Achane, was drafted.
Yeah.
So, some of these guys, obviously, if you're in an 8-team league, it may or may not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a 10 or a 12 team league, then some of these guys do make sense. It's just, we're kind of giving you ideas on who we like. This is not format specific.
Yeah.
It's just kind of guys that we think that could potentially be better than some of the guys that you might have.
Yep.
Next up, Cam Akers. He was traded to the Vikings. Interestingly enough, Alexander Madison had a decent game, better than his first 2.
Yeah.
So maybe he's reading some writing on the wall.
Could be.
But I still like Cam Akers, because if Madison fails, and Akers knows the offense, played for O'Connell.
Yeah.
So he could step in there in the next week or 2, start poaching some of those rushes and plays and snaps. And if he's hot, like he was at the end of last year, it's entirely possible that they ride him instead of Madison, because Madison hasn't given them what they've wanted.
Yeah. Cam Akers with, he had week 1 was decent, and then, disappeared, and then I think he
was a healthy scratch.
Well, yeah, healthy scratch.
And then
So
traded.
I think, if you had managers out there that panic and they just dropped him, he's out there. But, if you have, the Akers manager who's a little more, let's see what happens. He's probably rostered, but if he's out there, yeah, definitely scoop him up, because I believe by the end of the season he'll probably be, the 1A in that committee. And it'll be interesting to see what the Vikings do this season. I mean, are they 0-3?
0-3.
0-3. The chances of making playoffs when you're 0-3 are slim to none.
Right.
Granted.
Well, and last year they won all of those close games. Now they're losing them all.
Yeah, and that's what had happened the 2 years prior. The same thing. They lost.
Right.
They were like 0-8 in 1-score games or something.
And last year they were 11-0.
Yeah. So there's.
And now they're 0-3.
Yep. So there's obviously from the Vikings you hear Kirk Cousins being tied to the Jets now.
And the funny thing is, who leads fantasy football in our league?
Kirk
in
Cousins.
scoring? Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is the number 1 fantasy quarterback right now. But like I said, fantasy and football, in real life NFL league, Salah's come out, and Salah's going to lose his job if he has to keep coming out. And
they signed Trevor Siemian.
Okay.
Big name signing.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't start in a week or 2, Saul is going to get run out of town by the Jets fans because I'm sure he's probably just doing whatever ownership and the front office, the GM's telling him, "Oh, Zach Wilson's our guy." He's not it.
It's one of those things that
they have.
Yeah,
God,
it's one of those things you don't want
opportunity
to play or coach in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing against the people there or anything, but they're feast or famine. I mean, they do not like when your players are not doing. If they at the beginning of the season they were sure they were winning the Super Bowl.
Well, they had that roster along with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I still don't even know if they were going to win their division.
Yeah,
but they had their heart set on we are winning the Super Bowl, and now they're a team that could easily finish in the bottom 6 or 8 teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, I would be frustrated also. I would be saying, why can't we try, especially since we are this close?
Yep.
But, I don't think they can afford a guy like Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, like I said, it was just interesting to see what the Vikings do because if Kirk leaves, I don't even remember what the Vikings have behind him, but that would just take that entire offense down.
Ponder? That was a few years ago.
Yeah, which would hurt, a potential late season push again from Cam Akers. So.
Right. So, speaking of the Vikings, ex-Viking receiver Adam Thielen. He not only does he appear to be Dalton's favorite target, he was Bryce Young's favorite target.
Mm-hmm.
He saw a lot of action last week. He saw a lot this week. Now, do I think that someone could possibly trade Adam Thielen for Travis Kelce? No. But, if he's available on your waiver wire, I would certainly consider him. I mean, in my 16-team league, I drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
I played him this week.
Yeah.
He helped me win. Yeah. So, he looks a lot better. They know who he is. They know that he's the guy that has great hands, is a great route runner. He may be a little older, but he's doing what he's expected to do. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you're rewarded.
Yep. Yeah, and he's always been really good in the red zone, too. I mean,
a
lot of touchdowns caught by Thielen from when he was with the Vikings. So if they can get into the red zone, he's probably their main guy that they're going to look for.
Right.
Like we said, with Dalton coming in, helped that offense, push the ball, challenge the defense a little more. So, yeah, I like Thielen.
Yeah, which is why he had like 145 yards receiving.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Again, in that same DraftKings lineup, DFS, I think he's a good play, especially if Dalton's going to be there again this week. Because I believe revenge game against Minnesota.
Right.
He could be featured.
And once again, a great Minnesota defense. Yeah. Sarcasm.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Puka Nacua.
Probably not out there, but
it depends. It depends on how big your league is. Yeah. I just wanted to throw it out there because I would be remiss if he's available on the waiver wire and we don't mention him in a 16-team league. I mean, after week 1, he was picked up. I think he was picked up after. I picked him up in one of my leagues, and I think I don't remember if I did it after the first week or the second week. I think I did it after the second week.
Yeah, I think in our redraft, which is a 12-man, I think Nick got him after the week 1 performance.
And I think in my 10 team, 8 or 10 teamer, I picked him up after week 2. I mean, you wouldn't believe what's on the waiver wire. So, and that's why I said, some of these guys, depending upon the format, maybe Puka's available.
And I think even when Cooper Kupp comes back,
he's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think those two out there
they're so similar.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, you look at Nacua, the week 1, week 2, and then even a couple times this week. He's just wide open half the time.
Yeah.
He knows how to, he's the same guy. He understands what the defense is doing, where the pocket is, where he can get open, where he could sit in the zone, and then he's also, fast, got good hands, can make contested catches. So I think when Cooper Kupp shows up, I think Stafford's going to throw the ball 50 times a game, and it's going to be 25 targets for Cooper Kupp and 25 targets for Nakua.
It very well could be. Yeah, it very well could be. And then the last two are kind of a pair. Not a pair in that you would choose both of them.
Yeah.
But you would probably choose one or the other, and it deals with Mike Williams being out for the season, either Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnston. I am tending toward Josh Palmer, even though in the past, Josh Palmer in the past he's had highs and lows. Yeah. He's played some decent games and scored a lot of points, and then he'll come back and he'll lay an egg.
Yeah.
And Quentin Johnston has not been a big-time target there yet. That could change.
Keenan Allen had 20 targets.
I get that.
And then Austin Eckler probably gets 8-9 a game too. So
but you've got Williams 10 or 12 to dole out.
Yeah, it's got to go somewhere with as much as they throw the ball. Even when Eckler's healthy, they still throw the ball so many times.
Right.
Like I said, Oz is leaning Palmer, I lean Johnston. I actually drafted him in our league, but then same thing, not super involved. He's got the profile to be, a very good receiver. He's tall, fast. I think, like I said, I think he fills that Mike Williams role a little better than Palmer does. If that's what they're looking for, is somebody to just basically replace Williams. But I think Palmer's good if you need help now, and then even too, I'll throw DFS, Palmer.
Oh, yeah.
If you want a deep dart throw for cheap so you can spend more money elsewhere, I think Johnston would be a good play as well. So it just kind of depends on, where you might, find yourself leaning to. I think Johnston's a longer season play, pick up and stash for a week or two, just kind of see what happens. If he comes out and in 2 weeks still only has, over those 2 weeks only has 8 targets, then you're like, oh, well, maybe this isn't it. But if he comes out and it slowly ramps up, like I said, I think he's more of a longer season kind of play, in my opinion.
And that's one of the things also is, if you look at targets that players are receiving, that usually is a good indicator of potential performance moving forward. Yeah. The two guys that got 20 targets each, that they're going to be huge either way. But Puka Nacua had 15 the first week or something, and another 10 or 12 because he had
18, I think, week 2.
Yeah, it's those ridiculous numbers. You can start saying, if you take a look at how players have done over the past few weeks, you'll be able to tell, well, this guy's getting a lot of looks. Those are going to turn into catches, or they could turn into catches.
Yeah, which, targets, if you listen to other podcasts and stuff, where I've picked it up, it's an earned statistic. A target is, you have to be able to run a route, make a move, or like we said with Nakua and Cooper Kupp, finding a zone. That's an earned target or an earned stat. It's not, granted, you have design plays and there's quarterbacks up there that no matter what will just throw it to a certain guy. It doesn't matter the coverage or how many guys, triple
Aaron
coverage.
Rodgers to Devontae Adams.
Exactly, yeah. So, that's, like I said, so targets are a good indicator of how involved and even the trust that person has. Obviously, Matt Stafford trusts Puka Nacua,
right?
And same with Tutu Atwell. He's getting decent amount of targets too. So, so stuff like that, that's a good thing. And that was something that Nick had said when he was on too about the targets turning into receptions. If a guy's getting 8 targets a week, but for 2 weeks it's only translating to 3 catches for 20 yards,
it could change.
It could change, but that could just be the kind of player they are. So
right, and it also depends on, were those drops, were they balls that were not catchable, were they passes defensed? All of that comes into play in determining, which is why the higher number generally means they're trusted.
Yes.
Like Austin said.
Yep.
So going to our sell high segment, we already talked a little bit about Raheem Mostert. If I were a Raheem Mostert owner right now, I would try and get as much as I could for him. I mean, I could easily. The funny thing is, I could see getting, for argument's sake, let's say that I had Raheem Mostert, I could expect that I would get a guy like Josh Jacobs, or I'm trying to think of who else was out there that, we've got a few of them. A Jahmyr Gibbs, a Dameon Pierce, and another high-quality player.
Yeah.
As in either a tight end or a wide receiver, that people are going to go, yeah, I mean, it's Raheem Mostert. That dude just scored 40-some points.
Yep.
Well, great. He scored 40-some points. It all depends on if he plays the whole season. It depends on how much is poached by Devon Achane. And the other guys coming back. There's just so much going on there that I would get rid of him. That's me. Everyone doesn't necessarily agree with who to get rid of at certain times. Our second one was Devontae Adams. I mean, we both agreed last week to flip him. And right now, he's huge. People are going to give a lot for him. They'll give a top running back for him. I mean, would I give CMC for him? No way.
Yeah, you'd have to do Devontae and a piece, but
right.
But
if I were trying to get a CMC, I would definitely give up Devontae and a piece for a CMC, or some of those other guys that are available. Then we have our buy low, and our buy low is really guys that have not performed the way that you would expect them to. And I guess I could throw Joey Burrow in here, but I didn't.
I'm struggling with that because I have Burrow as well in the redraft league. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, you look at
But are you willing?
Higgins,
are you willing to sell? Right, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are two guys that we've got on our list. Are you willing to sell any of those guys if you had them? I wouldn't.
No, I mean that's the tough part too. We say buy low. I mean, is it possible? For sure. I mean, you got people. Like I said, same with like we were talking about Cam Akers. You got owners that are, winless or 1-2 at this point. That might feel they need to shake the roster up because they're not scoring that many points because these guys are underperforming. That's the owner of these guys you want to target, not somebody who's 2-1 or obviously 3-0. They're not going to give these guys up because their team is doing well. They can afford to wait for what T. Higgins and especially Jamar Chase can be.
Now, if I were like in my league, I would love to have either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. I would probably, and people are probably going to say, well, that's not good value, but it's a 16-team, 2 running back league. You got to remember that. So, I've talked about Akers or Gainwell because Gainwell had that big first week. Now, is DeAndre Swift, pushing him out? Very possibly. But, I mean, he still had a decent stat line.
Yeah.
I would do one of them and a Lockett, or even who was I saying? Adam Thielen.
Oh yeah.
For T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. Mainly because you see the points that these guys are putting up now. You're giving away a running back who may or may not be starting, but it's close. And you're giving up someone who's not scoring much.
Yeah.
So I always try and look at these guys that are performing poorly 2, 3, 4 weeks in, which is why I tried to trade for Josh Jacobs last year. And Josh Jacobs is on our list. His point total is horrible.
Yeah.
He has not been involved. Will that change? I can't see how it won't change.
Yeah.
So if you have that possibility, you go out there and you say, okay, what can I throw together to make it look like I'm giving them, and as long as you give them more points scored in the year, usually, I'll give them 2 guys that are scoring better than a Josh Jacobs or a Damian Pierce or a Jahmyr Gibbs or either Higgins or Jamar Chase. And I'll give you 2 guys that are scoring more than that person to take that guy off your hands.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to make it sound like you're taking the chance.
Yeah.
We don't know if this guy's going to come back.
Yeah.
We don't know what, Joey Burrow could be injured the whole season. That's my argument.
Yeah.
If Joey Burrow is injured the whole season, well, Higgins and Chase aren't going to do much. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these guys have proven track records.
Yeah.
All of these guys outside of Jahmyr Gibbs has a proven track record.
Yeah. The one that I've looked at but scares me is Damian Pierce, just because Stroud has actually looked pretty good so far. I mean, he looks comfortable. I mean, they're playing in catch-up mode because it is, well, not this week because they took it to Jacksonville.
Which surprised me.
Yeah, I think that surprised
It was a week of surprises in fantasy football or in football.
Houston's been Jacksonville's kryptonite for a couple seasons now. But Pierce, the thing with in most matchups, Houston's going to be behind, so that's why your Tank Dell has been kind of one of the hottest waiver wire ads.
He could even be on there, right?
Yeah, one of the hottest ones. Who else? Why can't I think of their other receiver that's been pretty good as well? Shoot, I can't think of it. But they had another guy that's gotten quite a few targets. But something like that, they're gonna be playing from behind. Stroud didn't he put up like 400 yards 2 weeks ago? Or
maybe
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of yardage, but it was super quiet because they were behind and they lost anyways. But so Pierce, like I said, that he just kind of scares me because he doesn't see a whole lot of passing work. But still, he's a decent chance for a touchdown if they get into the red zone because he's kind of back.
Right, and depending upon your format, he may be better than one or both of your running backs.
Mm-hmm. That's true, especially with all the injuries out there. There's a lot of teams hurting because of that. So I mean,
that's what it really comes down to is you have to look at some of these guys and you have to say, are they better or do they hold more potential on the season than the guys that I currently have?
Yep.
And if that's the case, then you try and throw together an offer that doesn't hurt you. I am always one to trade 2 for 1.
Mm-hmm.
I always try and trade 2 for 1 because I can easily replace with whomever on the lower end and bring up one of my other guys. But you're getting a guy who, for all intents and purposes, will score more on a weekly basis than the guy who he's replacing. And then you're throwing someone else in to give them the feeling that they're coming out ahead.
Yep.
So just what I do.
Yep.
I mean, the trade that went on last year with Cup for CMC, that was offered to me, and I couldn't pass that one up.
Yeah.
Turned out great for me.
Well, yeah, at that time, that's
you were looking at 1-1.
Was about the fairest trade you probably could have gotten.
Yeah. You were looking at the top running back for the top wide receiver. I needed running backs. I had wide receivers that were okay after Cup, and they needed a wide receiver and could deal CMC. So you can't just say, well, I can trade with anybody. No, you still have to come up. I generally look at someone's roster and say, I'll look at the owner of T. Higgins' roster and I'll say, well, the running backs are bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for someone because I drafted 4 running backs in the first 6 rounds or whatever.
Yep.
I'm looking for someone who needs a running back like a Cam Akers who could turn into a starter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can trade him probably for more right now, depending upon what he does. Mm-hmm. If they move him into the starting role and he blows up, the sky's the limit for what I can get for him.
Yep.
So, but you take the chance that he may not turn into anything. Madison may turn it around. Might be something like Josh Jacobs or whoever else, where they're just starting out slowly and they end up playing well. So you just have to think about, can I afford to lose him? Well, I've got CMC and Ramondre Stevenson as my normal two starters. So unless one of those two gets injured, I've got Gainwell and Akers. If I could trade Akers for a guy like Higgins or Jamar Chase, I'd do it in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I have to sweeten the pot a little bit, and I probably have to give, like I said, Tyler Lockett. But I've got Jalen Waddle. That gives me a great nucleus right there.
Oh, yeah.
So you just got to look, you got to find people. You got to find what they need. You play from your strength or your depth into someone's weaknesses and get a player who potentially is just not off to a good start because of injuries or whatever.
So before we wrap up, I just remembered who I was trying to think of on the Texans. It's Nico Collins.
Oh yeah.
Just
He had a big.
in my mind.
He was like 7th or 8th, I think, in studs this week. Big week. Yes. So.
Yep.
So that's all we've got for this week. We will be back. We're probably going to have to do a Thursday.
Yep.
Someone has a wedding that they need to attend to in Duluth,
Minnesota.
So he will, Austin will be gone starting Friday evening. So we'll probably record Thursday.
Yep.
So we won't have a wrap up of the Packer Detroit game, which is unfortunate. It means we don't get P's pick, and we don't get, P obviously choosing the Packers, right?
Oh, of course. She has to.
I mean,
I think she would because we taught her go Pack Go.
Okay.
So, she's got plenty.
Okay. So I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a great week.
Bye.